Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Bill now.
All right, thank you, Gloria. Well, welcome everyone to the first program from Southcoast Writers Guild for 2022. Pretty excited. We got a great turnout today and a great program to share. We've got poets and nonfiction writers and fiction writers. 6 of our best are going to be sharing their work with us today. And just to kind of go over the rules, each writer will have an opportunity to present a book or a work, given 5 minutes to tell us about it, and then a 5-minute period or so to have questions and answers there. But it is, I don't have a timer with me, so I think we don't have any problem going a little bit over if we need to. The order is basically at my discretion, and I've just been looking at what we have coming up here. It is, I take it in basically the same way that people volunteered. So first up, we have Companions Along the Way by Deanna Shapiro. Deanna, this is your 3rd published work of poetry. She's won awards in the Poetry Society of Vermont and been nominated for a Pushcart Award. So Deanna, we're looking forward to what you have to show us.
Thank you very much, Bill. I published this book, Companions Along the Way, this past spring of 2021. And I published it through a local press, self-published it through Onion River Press. And they have been wonderful. They are an offshoot of Phoenix bookstores, of which there are 3 here in Vermont. And the local one, the one nearest me, is here in Burlington. And I had a very nice relationship with Rachel Fisher, who does this work. What they propose to do is help Vermont authors who want to be published. And so I wanted to publish this book of poems, which are poems from 1998 to 2021. And they're poems that weren't published in my prior 2 books. I was very fortunate in finding a layout person. The Poetry Society of Vermont used her for all of their publications, and I knew of her through them. And she did the whole layout in a very congenial, modest fashion. And I was very grateful to have such ease and lack of frustration in that part of the process, because it can be quite frustrating. And the only frustrating part was for her that I kept changing endings of certain poems and editing as I went along, which I find happens to poets. So the book is actually in 3 parts. The first part is nature and spirit. The second part is people and places. And the third part is artists and writers, mostly dead. But they were companions along the way for me because I also paint. And these were my favorite modern poets of the 20th century for the most part, and artists. And so it was a complete joy for me to share all of this. And I will show you the cover page of it. Hopefully this is going to work after Gloria's help and Denise's help. Can you see that? No? Oh, good.
Looks like you have the agenda up.
Yeah, I see that. I have the agenda up too. Okay, well, so Gloria, you're the backup.
Deanna, a simple solution would be just to hold up your book for all of us to see. We'll see it just fine.
Oh, okay. All right, well, there it is anyway. Okay, so that is the cover of the book. And we know that covers are very important to books. But my feeling about this publication is that, or was that, I wanted it to reflect me. I'm not so interested in how many sales I make. I wanted it to be reflective of what I like and what suits me. And this particular cover has an image on it that's been with me for maybe about 25 years or more. It's an image of two elderly women. And I met them at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, where they're two sisters, and one sister brought the other to donate blood before surgery. And I was there with my daughter, who was also donating blood before surgery. And when these two women left, they left ahead of me. This is the image that stuck with me. It was about two sisters who had shared a history, who had intimacy, who were so comfortable with each other. It was a very poignant, heartfelt image to me. And I tried to recollect it as best I could and put it down as best I could. So this was very important to me, as well as a few illustrations that I had in the book, and also the fact that some of the poems in the book might not actually be poems, not even prose poems, but they're very short pieces, and I wanted them in. And so because I self-published it, I had the opportunity to do what I liked and what felt right to me and what I wanted to include, because I wanted this to be a publication for my children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews and grandnieces, for the family, in other words. So in this way, I custom made this book the way I wanted it to be. And there was one other thought that I was going to make, which I have forgotten. But the other two books that I published were, one was self-published online and one was published by an independent press in Georgia. And they were all very different experiences. I enjoyed them all and had different satisfactions from the different experiences, which I hope I'll get to share with you next month on the panel about publishing. So basically, I think that is what I wanted to share. And I think I'll end right there.
All right. If we have questions, appreciate it if you kind of raise your hand. Are there any questions? Well, I have one. Deanna, you said that you wrote this with your family in mind. What kind of reaction have you heard from your family?
That's a very good question. Well, a lot of the books went to grandnieces and grandnephews who are as yet too young to appreciate, but they are, being saved. They're signed by me to them exclusively. And basically my children and nieces and nephews, for example, very much appreciated this book and the other two books as well that I've written, because they regard me as now as the family matriarch. I'm really almost the only one left in my generation, and I hold the history. And so they're very pleased and proud to have these things. And I will say that one cousin told me that she had never read poetry before, and she really enjoyed this. And by the way, I write narrative poetry, and I believe in writing accessible poetry. So these are basically little short stories, and she really enjoyed them. However, when she got to the artists section about modern artists that I have loved along the way, she couldn't relate to that because she wasn't familiar with them. And that is a problem for anyone reading the book, because I wasn't about to publish photographs of each artist's work so that people could relate to that artist if they had never heard of that artist, for example. But today with Google, anyone who is interested in artists could Google and find images that would reflect the poem. So yes, that would be my answer.
Okay. Any other questions? Gloria, if you could stop
I have a
sharing the
question,
screen.
Bill. Deanna, did you have to order a certain number of these books, or how did that work?
I did not have to order a certain number. I did order 100 copies. I really was not interested in selling them at this point. And so all the copies that have been sold through Amazon and through Phoenix Books and through the Vermont Bookstore in Middlebury. And so I got the basic package that Onion River Press had on their schedule because I didn't want marketing and I didn't want any of those other features. So it was a very modest expense and very pleasing to me in terms of my goals and values with regard to this.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Debbie?
Yes, Deanna, this is just delightful. I love your cover so much. Is there a spot in your book that explains your cover or no?
Oh, thank you, Debbie. That was the thought that I
love
lost.
it. I love it.
The answer to your question is yes.
Good.
I have a poem in the book, a prose poem about these two women, and it's called Companions. And it's about the short, brief time that I had sitting next to the one sister until her other sister came out. Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me, because I did want to say that.
It's just, it's the simplicity of it is so thought-provoking that I was hoping that that would be in your book. So very nice, very nice.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Harry?
I would just like to thank you, Deanna, for your leadership in our poets group and for our entire guild, because your experience and your insight into writing poetry has been really helpful to me, and I think to a lot of other people. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Harry.
Gloria, you're on mute. Can't hear you. Oh, no question? Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Ginger.
I just want to say, I just put the direct link to Amazon to your book in the chat in case anybody wants to do that.
Thank you.
Because I was going to ask you how to get it. And when you said it's on Amazon, that's the easiest way if we're not in Vermont. So,
Right.
All right. Thank you, Deanna. Appreciate it. Time to
Bill.
move on here. Ed White, Misdemeanor, the Adventures of Celia J, a 13-year-old detective. And for that, I'll turn it over to the very nattily dressed Mr. Ed White.
Yeah, okay. So this is my show. Misdemeanor by Celia J. Very nice, glossy, colorful cover, hard copy, case bound, quality job by History of Books. Okay. Reading a little text about this. There's a new crime fighter in town. She's smart, she's fearless. She's 13 years old and determined to be the world's greatest detective. She uses the skills learned at a CSI summer camp to investigate an attempt to swindle her father. Following the tragic loss of her mother, Celia's father enrolls her in the classes to ease her grief and keep her in a safe environment for the summer. Celia excels at the investigative lessons, earning her the respect of Detective Lieutenant Beth. Celia sees Beth as her new heroine and hopefully a suitable companion for her widowed dad. However, a devious woman with long blonde hair already has her sights on Celia's father. Aided by her accomplice, Jerry the Moke, a scary tattooed man, she proposes a phony investment scheme. When Celia suspects something is wrong and launches her investigation and surveillance, she is trapped in a dangerous predicament, far from home and help. An exciting first-person, character-driven, middle-grade mystery filled with a compelling cast of heroes and villains. There's a clever plot, crime scene investigative tools, suspense, and humor. Also, a heartwarming backstory and a cat named Mr. Whiskers. What's not to like? The book for both young and adult readers. And it is available from historyofbooks.com, which is this. Okay, and other major bookstores. So I'll read a little bit of the narrative, give you some feel for what the book is. It sounds like. Suddenly, in the side mirror, I saw part of a tattooed arm, something gray, and then nothing, as a blanket was thrown over my head. I was lifted off the ground with my arms pinned to my side. I was screaming and kicking with my high tops. I heard the side door slide open, and I was thrown inside. I heard duct tape ripping off a roll, and they wound it around me, then around my ankles. The van drove off and turned a sharp corner, and I rolled and crashed in the side. This is not good. I squirmed my body to lie across the van. When it braked sharply, I crashed in the front seats. It started again, and I rolled and crashed into the rear door. This is definitely not good. The van bumped over a curb and stopped abruptly. I crashed in the front seat again. I felt like a tennis ball being volleyed over a net. The sliding door opened. Someone grabbed me and threw me over a shoulder. It must be the scary tattooed man. I heard an outdoor bulkhead open and the doors slap against the house. We went downstairs into a dank, smelly basement. He flipped me off his shoulder and flat onto the floor. I was in a tight spot. I needed to get out of here. I started screaming, "Help!" I'll leave that there. So this all begs the question about why, as a writer of thrillers and mysteries filled with murder and mayhem, I suddenly turned to children's literature. And a definite answer, I think, is a little bit unsure, but I did have 5 granddaughters who came to the farm every day after school, and they waited there for their parents to pick them up. So I observed their young teenage behavior and their speech patterns and their bickering and complaining and everything else that they did. And that may have attributed to it. And I went to the library and I looked at YA books, the young adult books, and they're quite extreme, a little bit shocking in their language and content. So I dropped down into middle grade and felt much more comfortable there. I thought about going to a mall and hanging around and watching kids, but I figured I'd look suspicious and probably get arrested. I didn't do that. So it's just something that came to mind one day, and once I got the germ of an idea, then I was all into it. I mean, I wrote this thing in very, very short order. Then when I sent it out to history of books, there was about a year-long wait, and then on New Year's Day of 2019, I had nothing better to do, so I emailed the acquisitions manager and asked her for the status of the book. And half hour later, I got a 10-page contract in my email. So that was quite thrilling. And it's gone on from there. So History of Books has been a wonderful partner with everything they've done, and they do all of it. They do all the artwork and everything else, and the marketing and whatever. So the reason we're recording this today is because Deanna Livesay, assistant director at Histria, asked about the meeting, and so then Gloria suggested the recording, and Bill, copied everybody on that. And so thank you for all approving. So I would suggest that a lot of you that have these nice books, maybe check out historyofbooks.com, and they do have a submissions format there, and they do publish a wide range of books, including the children's books and the arts and history and scholastic books and whatever. So please check it out. I'll show you that again, because when I say history, a lot of people think that I'm just saying history.
Hold it up a little higher, Ed.
How's
Yeah,
that?
back it up some. There.
Good.
Yep.
Spelled HISTRIA books.com. So check them out. They're good people. So my thanks to them, to Diana and Diana Livesay and Kurt and Dana at History of Books. So thank you all for this opportunity. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. Who has a question? Yeah, a lot of silent applause for
Crickets. Crickets.
Is there any questions? Comments? Go ahead, Harry.
Well, thank you, Ed. Your presentation was very, very well done. And of course, as you know, I bought copies of your book for my 12-year-old granddaughters for Christmas, and you were gracious enough to sign those and write a very nice message to the girls in the book. So thank you for that. And I share with you my concern over observing children to become aware of them. I'm trying, amongst other things, I've written some pre-adolescent stories, first person, and find it very difficult to get in the head of a pre-adolescent child. And so I do the same thing. I kind of watch kids at playgrounds, but then I look around for the cops.
Yeah, exactly, Harry. Exactly.
And thank you for the history of book, pioneer work, because my third book, I'm wrestling with what to do with it. And I may actually submit to Histria, although it's the third one in a series. I don't know how they would deal with that, but I thought I
think
might
they'd be interested in the series, Harry.
Well, I could put it into into one book, but I'm at the point where I'm pursuing that. So thank you for that also.
Yeah, I've read your books, Harry, as you know, and I think you've got something there that could get into the school systems to be taught in history or social studies or whatever they have nowadays. But I think your books are just remarkable accounts of your grandparents and everything they went through at an era which a lot of the kids today don't know anything about. So I wish you good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
Anybody else? Deborah, did you have a question, or
No.
Joyce? You're on mute.
Sorry, just wondered that. So how many, what kind of a print run did you do? And do you do more as, as things sell? Like how do you deal with that?
Joyce, Histria handles every part of it. I have no idea what the print run was or actually where it's going. I will get a report in April or May, which will be the first report and the first royalties coming out. I
Nice.
do know that they have entered the book in the UK Book Fair under a children's category, and they wouldn't do that if they didn't think it had some merit or
Yeah,
whatever. And so that's
Looks
one
great.
indication.
great
But
looking
the-
cover. Yeah.
Pardon? Yeah, and
Looking
I've
cover,
just
yeah.
just approved the cover for the second volume, which will be out in the fall of this year. That's called The Case of the Crooked Cat. It's still the same young Celia J involved. And then the third book is in 2023. That's The Case of the Clumsy Clown. And and I matured Celia a little bit, even though the time frame is basically her summer vacation. But she's approaching high school and suddenly becoming aware of emotional and physical changes, and she has her first boyfriend, and I gave him or he is from the Cherokee Nation. So he's visiting in her town, visiting his sister. But so I brought in the indigenous peoples, and then also in that last volume, I bring in a disabled 12-year-old girl, and just giving kids like that a hero to look forward to. So I just tried to cover all the bases in the three books, and it was a wonderful experience.
Denise.
Ed, congratulations on the book. I'm wondering if you had a lawyer review the contract, that 10-page contract, before you signed it. I just saw a first contract of publisher I'm considering, and my brain just froze.
Yeah. I had the same problem. And in fact, when I got it, first thing I did was I called Eileen and I said, I just got this contract. What do I do now? I mean, I was, and then the second contract was to my lawyer. Second call was to my lawyer, and he went over the contract and suggested some changes. And there was, I guess, a little back and forth between him and History of Books, and they came to an agreement, and I signed it. So it was that easy. But it's just been a complete experience with them. I don't do anything other than the fact that I approved their the final copies of everything, including the artwork. And when they sent me the artwork for this, I think there were 6 suggestions I made about the cover, and they accepted all of them, which made me feel pretty good. And I just last month they sent me the cover for the second volume, and so I approved that also with a minor color change or something like that. But they just do everything. So it's just been a wonderful experience. And,
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Eileen? I think you're muted. Eileen, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I've got 2 things going on here. The Authors Guild, if you join, and I don't believe it's expensive, I'm not a member, but I keep hearing from other writers that when you have a contract, they have attorneys that will, for not the cost of like you going to a private attorney, but the Authors Guild has a group of attorneys who will look at a contract for a reasonable price and give you advice on it. And I think that would be really worthwhile.
well, this was a little bit
Unless you have a
different
son.
situation.
Yeah, unless you have a son who's a lawyer, and then I'd say go with that.
And particularly, he's a contract lawyer.
Yeah.
He worked for a German multinational, and he handles contracts all over the world. So he's quite adept at that. And he didn't charge me much or anything. Good kid.
Denise?
And I also think Deanna had her hand up. I will say I did join the Authors Guild recently, and I do think it's a wonderful organization. It's not inexpensive. It was like, I think $130, and I had to fill out a form about even, you know, why did I qualify? But they've modified their qualifications recently. The other great thing is you don't have to join to go to their workshops. And that's how I started getting familiar with them. A friend suggested I start going to their workshops, and they have the most wonderful panel discussions on aspects of publishing, different types of books, and they're all on Zoom. So I just went to one yesterday that was about trade versus academic publishing. And it was fabulous. Every one of their programs I've gone to, they're about an hour long, and I learned something every time. So you can do that for free and then decide if you want to join or not.
Deanna? Can't hear you. Yeah.
I have a comment, Ed. When you introduced your book and you said you had a 13-year-old protagonist, I thought, how could you get inside her head? And then you very deftly explained that you had 5 granddaughters that you observed carefully. So that was wonderful. And I just loved the way that you did that. But also, you had to use your imagination. I mean, you couldn't observe everything about them that would be relevant. And so a lot of it came from your imagination as well.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, well, yes, it did. And particularly since the other 10 novels I wrote were so, you know, 180 degree in the other direction. This was fun. It really was. It really was fun. And in the second book, I actually, at times while I was typing, I just burst out laughing out loud. And I might mention to Eileen that I have one character in that second book, Sally McNally, who I kind of patterned after Eileen's friend Sally Koash, and who I only met a couple of times before she passed, but she was just a remarkable woman. So I used her as my model for Sally McNally in the second book.
So Eileen shared the Authors Guild website in the chat if anybody's interested in that. Any other questions or comments? Or Harry?
I think the Florida Writers Association has also vetted some literary attorneys. Might be another source for a lawyer.
Well, they do have a couple of members that I think actually advertise as attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you, Ed. That was really compelling. Good luck with it, and hope those royalty checks start rolling in. And
thanks, Bill.
You can afford a shirt with a collar next time or something. There you go.
Got it.
All right. Next up, Anne is going to share some cancer to caring insights. Her book on dealing with colon cancer and the journey that she went on with that, and how it took her all the way to the White House at one time. So, Anne, turning it over to you.
Wow, thank you very much, Bill. I want to show you my book. This is Cancer to Caring. It is the story of my journey from colorectal cancer diagnosis through ostomy surgery and to my volunteer work to inspire ostomates in local, national, and international arenas. This memoir is unique because it contains poems as well as prose. So I'm just going to read you the opening paragraph. Most creative journeys of service do not begin with a half teaspoon of blood, but mine did on a sunny day in March 1988. At that time, I was a 51-year-old woman, happily married, the mother of 4 children, and had a rewarding career as a teacher. This experience would take me into the depths of my soul, around the world, and even to the White House. I had read an excerpt of the story at a guild meeting and was encouraged to continue. I had portions written and needed to join them in a compelling narrative and add information about my leadership with the United Ostomy Association, the International Ostomy Association, and my current work with Friends of Ostomates Worldwide USA that sends donated ostomy supplies at no cost to individuals and groups in 98 countries around the world. When I finished the first draft, Ed White met me at the library and offered his premium edition of Grammarly to help me edit. Then I remembered Ed Feeney's advice to get testimonials. I reached out to former and recent colleagues as beta readers. They were willing to read and gave me wonderful testimonials. Brenda Elsiger, an author of several ostomy books, called me with 4 excellent edits. When the book was published, I gave away copies and emailed colleagues for whom I had addresses. I didn't have addresses. And I sent a copy to the editor of the Phoenix magazine. This is a publication that deals with all aspects of ostomy surgery and recovery. I included a note to thank him for all of his ongoing support of the ostomy community. I was surprised when someone who receives a digital copy of the magazine that comes out before the printed distribution that I get emailed me to say that a review of my book appeared in the winter 2021 edition. That was a wonderful surprise. And as a result, someone from Mexico bought a book. Wow, I reached an international audience. The response to the book has been very positive. I wanted to thank Eileen, who wrote a wonderful review on Amazon. Most said they read the 46 pages in one sitting. Many had a teary, emotional response. This was true for my granddaughter, Jennifer, who didn't know much about her grandmother's life. And I also heard from a high school friend that I hadn't heard from in 65 years. So touching people with my words has been the best validation for me, a writer. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Questions or comments or hands? Go ahead, Bob. Applause. Anybody? Cheryl?
You know, Ann, I think we joined the Writers Guild somewhere around the same time, 2005, somewhere around there. And I just want to say what a privilege and pleasure it is to know you, to read your work. And I don't know if you know, but Ann has been president of the Writers Guild twice, among her many other things that she does. And to share her journey and help so many other people and inspire them. It's really a wonderful thing that you do, Ann. And that's just one of the things that she does. So yes, applause.
Well, I have to thank you, Cheryl. When I was working with the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable, they were trying to promote their logo, which was a blue star. And I wrote a poem that Cheryl turned into a song. And at a national meeting, I won one of their awards and had to sing it before this audience. So business people, insurance people, doctors, researchers. So that was quite an event. And so Cheryl has been with me to support me through a lot of this, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I ran across that song a few weeks ago. I said, oh yeah, that's Ian's. Yeah.
And can
Go
you
ahead,
sing
Ed.
that for us now?
It was something like Blue Star for colon cancer. That's all I remember.
Sing it now, Ann. I think Ann's muted now.
Go ahead, Harry.
Well, one thing, is the courage that not only that Ann showed in her battle with cancer, but in her courage, in the revelations in her book and everything else that she has done. And that's what it takes to be a real writer. I mean, you got to feel this, you got to believe in it. You can't be concerned about being embarrassed about something that you write or say, and you just have to go all in. And that's exactly what Ann did. Yeah.
That's very well said, Ed. Very well said. Harry.
Thank you, Ed.
And I will second Cheryl's comments and yours also, Ed. I admire people that have the courage to write from the heart like that. And I also wanted to say how much I enjoyed reading your book, Ann, which I've already told you. And in terms of our mutual support within the group, I actually read your book at Ginger's house in the Adirondacks when my wife and I were visiting. So we're all in this together. And the integration of your poetry was so artfully done and skillfully done in your book. They were very appropriate poems and the placement of them. It was a real work of art.
Thank you.
Denise?
Unmute.
Looking for the button. I just want to thank Ann so much for writing this book. I heard you give a talk about it, about your cancer journey first. It was one of my early meetings with Southcoast writers, and it moved me greatly. And then your book came out, and at the time I was in Albany, and the friend whose apartment we were living in, her brother was going through colon cancer, and it really helped me to get a better understanding, and also to be able to support my friend whose brother was dealing with stage 4 colon cancer. And so it was, and I did read it in one sitting. But Ann is also being very modest, because here's her latest book that she kindly sent me, A Poetic Journey of Faith. And it's a wonderful book, but this book is one that I read only a few pages at a time to let it sink in. It's so, the other one I just read through and couldn't put down. And this one is one you really sit with and let sink in a completely different way. So your talents are very diverse, and I hope they get a greater audience, because you write beautifully, you go very deep, and you make it so we can all travel there with you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I just got an invitation to write a book. Somebody wanted to give somebody a gift that was unique. And so I spent all day yesterday putting together some of my travel poems that I had put in books that are now not in print. So that's my new project. And I think you have to have something different to do. And so I'm encouraged.
Go ahead, Pam. You're muted.
My husband and I have both read Cancer to Caring. And I think one thing about the book that I loved is the fact that the narration portions are refreshing. And then you get into the poetry, and it's just such a lovely movement from the beginning to the end. And we really thoroughly enjoyed it and did read it end to end in one sitting. I do agree with Denise that the poetry book, the newest poetry book that I have of yours, you do want to reflect on those poems, because they're so filled with many feelings, and it takes you on a journey with each one. So I really enjoy Ann's writing. She's been a mentor for me since I joined the Poetry Pod, and so has Denise, actually. So thank you very much for continuing to write.
Thank you,
Margaret?
Pam.
Yes. Am I on?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. I have had the privilege of knowing you, Anne, for 15 years, and I think you were one of the first persons I met when I joined the writers group. And your leadership throughout the years has strengthened our group and carried it through the weak times. And you've contributed constantly to it. Then when you sent me your book, I was very touched. And then to read your book and have the enrichment of it, sort of it was a cap on the cake, icing on the cake, so to speak. So I very much admire your ongoing work, and I was happy to know that you were speaking to people and sharing your experience as well as your book. And you are inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
Deborah, did you have your hand up?
I wanted to tell you, Anne, that when you so graciously sent me the copy of your book, and I read it through in just a short time, one sitting, but it rang a lot to me. My grandmother had an ostomy for the last 20 years of her life. We didn't know much about it. It's a long time ago. We didn't know much about it. And I can see where that would be very, very valuable for me to have understood it on a different level. Because I had she was kind of a crabby lady, just saying. And I think I earned a new understanding of it by reading your book, and it was very well done. So thank you so much. Nice job.
Thank you.
Deanna.
I just wanted to, as part of the poetry pod, Anne, I just want to ditto what everyone has already said about you, your work, your support, and your writing.
Thank you.
Eileen.
I wanted to just pick up on something Harry said about supporting one another. I'm in a couple of Facebook groups, primarily women writers, that have thousands of members, and they really do a tremendous job of supporting one another by sending out ARCs, advanced reader copies, and asking for reviews. And so we do that for one another. And this isn't a plug because I don't have a book, but the fact that Anne sent hers out, I was touched by that. And I think it was probably at a pretty big expense for the mailing and everything. We could do advanced reader copies, as many people do, just as a PDF. And then we have the opportunity to support one another and without having, and I hate to say this, but I can't afford to buy all your books. So I'm too busy wasting money entering things. So just to keep that in mind, if you want support from the group in terms of reader reviews on Amazon or Goodreads, it's a great way to do it. And you don't necessarily have to send the book as Anne did, although I'm thrilled that she did. But that's just my 2 cents there.
I like that. That's a good idea. Yes. Anyone else? Thank you, Anne. It was very well done. And obviously you've touched a lot with your inspirational story and such. And I did not know, I knew you were a past president of the Guild, but I didn't know it was a 2-time tenure. I'm hoping, at some point in the future, you and Cheryl will do a duet and maybe do it in rap or something with that song. I'll be able to hear that. All right. Next up, we're going to Harry Barnes, and Harry's going to talk about his Barnes Bridge series, look back at his grandparents' days in Appalachia. So Harry, where you go.
Thank you, Bill. I'm not sure how to bring this down. Oh, there we go. I'm going to talk about these first two books in my Over the Barnes Bridge series. She Called Him Jim, and I'll do a reading from the first book. The covers are interesting, as well as the publishing process, because I had no idea what I was doing. And I'll talk more about that after the reading. But the first cover in the books were inspired by family stories and unsolved mysteries. The first book, Why Did My Grandmother Get Sent to a Reform School When She Was a Teenager? And met my grandfather while she was at the reform school. The second book was motivated by a mysterious move from Baltimore City to the Appalachian Mountains. When when their fourth child died, their infant son John died, and the mystery was that my grandmother went to be with her mother in the mountains at her home and never returned to Baltimore. And my grandfather went up to be with her, and he never returned to Baltimore. He ended up living in the Appalachian Mountains, and he ended up being a coal miner. So those mysteries and all the missing pieces led me to research and write these books. My grandfather had a kind of a handyman business in Baltimore City, and I knew nothing about writing or publishing. So I kept looking for images. I found a picture of this wagon. I put my grandfather's name on it, and I traced this out of a book, and it looked like crap. And I had a friend that was an artist who turned it into a work of art for me. And I'm very indebted to Doug Jameson for doing that. This picture I stumbled on in the Appalachian town where my grandparents lived. There was a photographer there that had photographed this bridge and had prints for sale, these great big posters. And this bridge was the bridge to my grandparents' house, which locals always called the Barnes Bridge. And I got permission from Creed Calhoun to use, well, I paid him for it, but like $75, but I got permission to use his photo of the bridge for my second book. So these books evolved through a process. And I'll leave the screen share here to move onward. And okay. So to give you a little background, and then I'll do a short reading. Over the Barnes Bridge is a series of books I'm writing based on family stories about my grandparents, Ida and Jim Barnes, and the tragedies they survived in the early 1900s. Ida was a coal miner's daughter from the Appalachian Mountains of Western Maryland. Jim was the son of a Baltimore City carpenter. In book one, She Called Him Jim. My grandparents are 7 years old when, in separate incidents, their fathers are killed. Ida's in a hunting accident and Jim's in a robbery in Baltimore City. In 1908, when Ida is 15, her stepfather sends her to reform school in Baltimore City. There, she meets 16-year-old Jim, who's living 2 blocks away with his mentally ill mother and ne'er-do-well stepfather. The book tells of their serendipitous meeting, hardships they faced, romance, and marriage in 1912. Yeah, as an introduction to the reading, in book one, after Ida's father was killed, her mother, Clara, married another coal miner named Pat Doolin, whom my father referred to as that dirty Scotsman. And My father told of how Dolan did not tolerate talking at the supper table and would kick the table if anyone spoke. I knew my grandmother to be a no-nonsense, feisty woman who, as my mother put it, did not fade into the woodwork. My curiosity piqued by family stories about Ida being sent to a reform school in Baltimore City when she was a teenager. After much research and some imagination, this book was the result. The scene I'll read takes place at supper time in the Dolan's home in the small mountain town of Friendsville, Maryland. Characters in the scene include my grandmother Ida, who is 15, her younger sisters Annie and Lula, their brother William, their mother Clara Dolan, and stepfather Pat Dolan. Pat Dolan knew he had met his match in this whippersnapper of a girl. He saw the defiance in her dark eyes, and she was now nearly as tall as he was, almost 5'6" in her stocking feet. And worse yet, she was turning into a real beauty, although she didn't realize it yet. But when she did, he would have a real Hellcat on his hands. He had to think of some way to get rid of her. She was even starting to give him indigestion. The family had just sat down to supper when William, even though he knew Dolan's strict rule about not talking at mealtime, began to giggle about something Lola had done. "God damn it," Dolan yelled as he kicked the underside of the table, sending bowls of stew and glasses of milk skittering and spilling all over Clara's blue checkered tablecloth. "Quiet, a man don't need yacking at his table." They all knew better than to speak or to look him in the eye, so they sat with eyes downcast, waiting for his stormy mood to pass. As he reached to take another spoonful of his stew, he bellowed, "Ida, clean up the mess." "You clean it up. You made it," said Ida in a calm, strong voice, her face red as a hot coal, her eyes aflame with all the pent-up hatred. Clara was so shaken by Ida's outburst that she shuddered and dropped the glass she was holding, spilling more milk onto her tablecloth. Looking up, she saw her husband's face turn to stone. Placing his meaty, calloused hands flat on the table, his massive chest swelled as he pushed himself up ever so slowly. Then kicking his chair back against the china closet, he whipped off his wide leather belt. Ida's dark eyes never left Dolan's face, her defiance unwavering, but her mother's voice came loud and clear. "Run, girl, get out of here, run, run." And Ida ran and kept running until late that night. When exhausted, she sat down by the creek and wept. It was nearly midnight when Ida crept back home and peered through the dining room window into the foreboding darkness inside. Seeing no movement, she slipped in through the kitchen door and stopped to listen. Hearing Dolan snoring like the boar hog he was, she thought it would be safe to climb the ladder to her bed. Exhausted as she was, the turmoil inside her would not let her sleep. It was nearly daylight before she finally dozed off. It's the precursor to her being shipped off. Now, I'll just mention some things about publishing you might be curious about. Since I had just begun to write and trying to figure out what the heck to do with this book, I was ferreting about. We do have a writing kind of an institution nearby, the Bright Hill Press, and I knew Bertha Rogers, so I asked for her advice, and she suggested a publisher who was too busy to deal with my book for 6 months or so. And then I went to another group. There was a publishing co-op in a small town not far away. And I made contact with this writers and artists co-op to help edit the manuscript. And they subcontracted the layout and design to an online media design company. And I paid the co-op, and they subcontracted to the design company. And that was the process I used to publish the first two books. Since the time the co-op has dissolved, and so now I think I will use the online design company to do layout on my third book, because they did such a good job on the first two, and it'll be they'll be similar in that way. And I liked working with the online company. But I'm kind of sort of on my own with this third book. So using Ed's suggestions with Hysteria, and I have some beta readers that are giving me good feedback, and I'm anxious to get this published. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, Harry, one thing you should mention are the historical photographs and stuff that is included in your books. Can you show us, like a page of something, even though we may not be able to see it that well, but the book has all these, books have all these nice photographs and so forth, came out of the Historical Society or your family's archives, whatever.
Yeah, some I took off the internet, and I got photographs. It's a little difficult to do that.
You just
There,
hold the book up, maybe? No?
well, let me grab the book 2. It has some easy access pictures. Yeah, I appreciate you commenting on the historical value of the book. I was very surprised by friends that specifically commented on the details of the history of the time periods. Many people were taken back to the time period. I did a lot of research. This was a logging photograph, and this I found online. It was actually published by the Chicago University Museum, and I got permission from them. My grandfather, besides coal mining, also was a logger, and I got permission from Chicago University to use their photograph. And the Barnes Bridge picture I already showed you. Oh, there's another very interesting picture. Some of these pictures were not of very high quality, and working with the online company, they were able to do bleeds with these pictures. This everything's backwards. Okay, this is a photograph of my father and his 3 brothers, and it was not a very good photograph, but the man I worked with the online company, Justin Oliphant, he was able to work with these pictures, and I have about a dozen in each book. But then he also did bleeds of these pictures, so you can see in the background how he bled the picture behind the text. So I found it valuable to work with people that knew how to manipulate photographs and do some of that creative work. Yeah.
Anyone else? Comments or questions? Go ahead, Margaret. You're muted.
It's going to be important that your descendants will treasure your work. We think that they will somehow it'll filter down, but the truth is that your written work will become pride and joy for the family. And it's a wonderful thing to you have a gift that you have given the family. And well done.
Thank you, Margaret. It's interesting. My youngest son, who lives in Ithaca, he was like 45, 47, and he was reading my second book. He got about halfway through, and I was talking to him, and he said, "I never realized this. This is my family." It just dawned on him. He made the connection.
Denise.
Carrie, I've really enjoyed reading your first two books about your family, and they've really taught me something about a state I traveled through on my way north and south, and I just really enjoyed the way you approached writing about them and the history research you did. I'm wondering, as far as the book goes, since you worked with a cooperative first and then an independent kind of publishing, how did you deal with distribution, or was that important to you? Is your book getting into bookstores, or did you see it mostly as a book for family?
I haven't wanted to spend a lot of time with marketing, so it really was friends and family. It's on Amazon. It's available on Amazon, and it's very interesting how things just evolve. I have a granddaughter, or a great granddaughter of a cousin that has just read the books and responded on my website about them, how she was reading them tearfully and realizing her heritage. But I haven't done a lot of marketing. It's just available on Amazon. And there are historical societies in the county where my grandparents lived. So I've worked with the Garrett County Historic Society and the Friends Historical Association in the little town of Friendsville. So they sell my books there and have been very supportive. And I've had some really good newspaper coverage in the Garrett County Republican. Had an editor that did a very nice promotion for the book. But I'm lazy about marketing.
Thank you. It's just helpful to know. I mean, every book has its own goal, I think, to
Yeah.
the audience.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Well done, Harry. It's I always enjoy reading about the Barnes family, and it's interesting, and it's obvious how much research you put into it and how much dedication. It's just, some of the things that you get into are just incredible. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Bill.
Moving along, Joyce, A Nice Place to Die. This is your first novel, a debut novel. I know there's more in the works, but it takes place in a crime scene near Belfast, Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. So take it away, Joyce.
Hi, yes. It's, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, it's actually, I think, like a lot of people, it's not exactly my first book, but the first one that's actually going to be published. I wrote one when I took early retirement from work, and just thought, oh, I want to write books. So I wrote this book, and had no idea what I was doing, and still really don't. But one of the things I will say is I entered it in the Crime Writers of Canada Arthur Ellis Awards, because a mentor that I had at the Crime Writers of Canada, where I joined, who had been helping me a little bit, said, oh, you should just enter this, they're up for unpublished manuscripts. And this is something I'm going to say to everyone. So I entered it, the first thing I'd ever done, and I was longlisted in the awards, and I didn't get shortlisted, that didn't win, obviously, but to get that, it's, I think, what we're all looking for, a little bit of validation, especially when you're just starting out and you don't know what your voice is, or if anyone will
I'm on there too, just to see
listen
it.
to you. Yeah.
I'm on there too, just to see it, but I'm going to get off because it could reduce your bandwidth, could make it stutter.
If
Sorry, am I?
no, go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, and encouraged by this, the first thing that I wrote was a novel about a kidnapping in Mexico of all places that ended up in Manhattan. And I don't know where it came from, as I'm sure a lot of people, I know people who are actually writing from the heart and they're writing their own histories. They know where they're coming from, but I had no idea where this came from. I just thought it'd be an interesting concept to have a young Mexican boy kidnapped out of one of the huge markets there, because that's happening all the time apparently. But this little boy, who is not just a little boy from the stalls, he was actually the illegitimate son of a crime lord from Manhattan. And that's where the story starts. But anyway, that aside, I decided, well, you know, not necessarily write what you know, but I thought, well, I'd really like to write something about my hometown, which is Belfast in Northern Ireland. And I love murder mysteries. And as my mother used to say, she loved a good murder. So I thought this seems to be that I like that. So I started looking into writing a police procedural. And I have a cousin who was in the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary. So he gave me some pointers about things, and I just started writing it. So what happened was I sent it out when it was just at the beginning of its journey, and it wasn't particularly good. And that's another thing I will say. If anyone, I know a lot of the authors here, and I'm so privileged to be a member of such a literary group. I appreciate that. I know my books aren't of this literary genre, but I think if you're looking to get an agent, and it sounds like a lot of the authors, you know, they would be really good for them not to have to worry about doing any of the self-publishing. And it sounds like everyone's readings were fantastic. There's no reason why they couldn't have an agent look after all of these things for them. But anyway, I sent it out, and I didn't send out that much, about 10 or 12 queries to various agents, and I got some response. But so I went back to the drawing board and I started doing classes. I joined Crime Writers of Canada and the Sisters in Crime, and did a lot of classes and took all kinds of things for craft. And eventually I also entered other competitions as an unpublished writer. And that's why I encourage, I'm sure a lot of you do. I know someone just said they entered a lot of competitions. I think they're really worthwhile. So I entered Crime Writers of Canada each year, unpublished, and I entered the Daphne du Maurier Awards for unpublished writers. And in 2019, I was longlisted again, and then shortlisted for that. And then in New York, I didn't go because, you know, I didn't think I had a chance. I won the award for unpublished mystery suspense, which is their biggest category. So I thought, oh my goodness, this is great. And I was also that year longlisted again in Crime Writers of Canada. And I sent in an application just as COVID hit to get for a grant to go to a conference, Malice Domestic. And I didn't get the grant, but one of the conference chairs asked me to send the book to her because I sent in 3 chapters. And anyway, that's what happened. She ended up asking me again because I pulled it back, and then COVID, and she asked it for me to send it again, then asked me to submit to their publishers. So I did, and they asked me if I'd like to sign a contract for 3 books. I ended up signing one for 2 books because I was afraid of that pressure. But I just for anyone who's interested, I'll read you the production schedule if you'd like to hear it. And you're right about the contract. I was freaked out. 20 pages or more of a contract, and what I did was eventually, after trying to find, I went to an agency in Toronto and asked one of the agents there to help me, and she sent my contract to their department, and I spent $220, and they read through that contract, all 20 pages, and they gave me notes on what to ask for, and those notes I sent to the publishers, and they pretty much agreed to everything except they wanted to hold control of the cover, which was the one thing I wanted. But anyway, I didn't get it. But here's their schedule. Deliver manuscript on the 2nd of February. Developmental edit comes back on the 3rd of March to me. 1st of April, I deliver it back to the primary editor. Then the 1st of May, it goes for a red line copy edit. 1st of June, revised manuscript to me, to the another editor. 16th of June, due to me, those proof pages, updated bio and author, marketing plan, oh dear, pre-orders, and then 1st of July, due to the publisher. 2nd of August, release date. If that's not enough to scare the willies out of you, I don't know what is. But anyway, and if I have time, I'll just read you the first just about 2 minutes worth of the opening of the book, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not, it's just about Detective Sergeant Ryan McBride, who's got some issues, and he's arriving at a crime scene a little bit late, been held up, and it's outside Belfast in a forest park. Detective Sergeant Ryan McBride leaned against his car in Port Glenone Forest's windswept parking lot. That particular scent of an Irish autumn, damp leaves and wood smoke, hung in the air. And crows, black and boisterous, flapped and cawed in the dark trees above him. He should really grab a Tyvek suit, or booties at least, but he'd run out of patience. Couldn't be arsed to hang around any longer. 2 vans from the Forensic Sciences Unit crowded a narrow verge beside several squad cars. Ryan's partner, DS Billy Lamont, was over by one of the cars, interviewing the man who had found the body. Tall and thin, Billy was shivering, his boyish face blotched red and his shoulders tight. The witness, a stocky man with a thatch of ginger hair, slumped sideways inside the vehicle's open back door, his feet touching the wet grass. A little black dog jumped and yapped incessantly at his heels, aware perhaps of its owner's distress. Further down where the body lay, officers searched the undergrowth, their hands clasped behind their backs and their heads bowed. The mourners at a funeral. He pulled on his gloves. Now that he was here, he wanted to get to the scene. The CSIs clustered near the river and had locked the vans. God forbid, in the middle of an area crawling with police, they should leave the doors open. He headed over to the burly constable manning the entrance and signed a crime log. Here, the constable said, and reaching behind him, produced a pair of booties. Ryan nodded his thanks as he passed around the tape. The crime scene photographer, carrying a large bag and a couple of cameras, puffed up towards him. He was a strapping, florid-faced lad. I already took shots of everything, boss, but if there's anything extra you want, let me know. I needed to shoot the video before the FMO sees her. He should be here any minute. I'm going to grab a coffee. Freezing my tits off here. Ryan flailed a little on the way down and cursed under his breath. Too much of a hurry, too keen. He glanced around, remembering. He'd walked along the banks of the River Bann years ago with a girl called Maggie. He told her that the river had its source on Slieve Muck in the morns, and they'd had a good laugh at that. Trust the Irish to name a mountain after muck, but there was nothing to laugh at now. An early mist drifted in fragments around a young woman's body, with her face twisted to the right and hidden by a tumble of copper hair. She looked like a careless sunbather. She wore a thick, cream-colored sweater over black trousers. One of her red shoes had toppled away and lay abandoned by a mossy rock. It caught his eye. Shiny leather, a shock of crimson in the weeds. He crouched on a protective metal grid the crime scene text had set by the body. For the first time, he hesitated, caught something about her. What was that? The shade of her hair? He took out his pen and gently lifted a glossy reddish-brown ringlet from her cheek. His heart skipped a beat. No, no. He stood quickly and inhaled cold morning air. The sudden blood rush made him lightheaded. He knew her. Oh, Christ, he had slept with her.
Wow.
So anyway, that's the first part of it, and it comes out at about 86,000 words. I just sent it in about 3 days ago for the first edit. So we'll see. And the second one is of the same characters. And that's it. So
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well done. Yes.
yeah. That was a very, very complete report on this book and marvelous showing. I mean, the images are just breathtaking. So congratulations and good luck with it.
yeah, I haven't, I don't have they don't do a lot of marketing these days, actually. Even, I think even with the big publishers, you know, William Morrow and Simon & Schuster, you have to be James Patterson or Stephen Keen or someone to get real push. So a lot of publishers expect you to do a lot of your own publicity. And I don't even have a Facebook page. I just got my daughter to finish doing a website. And I think, like a lot of writers, we're kind of private people. And for me, the idea of being out there freaks me. I really don't like it, but you really have to do it if, you know, in this sense, if I want this to go anywhere or anyone to buy it, you have to push, you know. But anyway, I'm just trying my best. That's all.
That's all we can do.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Harry.
Joyce, it's so good to see you, and I like seeing you at our little get together over at, I guess, Landy's, I think it was. It's nice to have you back, and it harkens back to our first meeting when you came to the meeting at the library, and your first reading was just so perfect. I'm so glad to hear of your success. Your attention to detail is just superb. I really enjoy it. You have a real gift.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so Joyce, when you were talking to these people before they offered you a contract, did you have to outline your second book to them? Did they want to know that there was more coming, or were they just simply focused on the first book?
No, they actually, it was funny because they knew, I think in the submission, well, the first time that I was approached by the publisher, she said, you writing other things in this series? And I said, well, yes, I do see it as a series. And so when I got the file, and I did talk to her via email a little bit, but I didn't say much about the second book. It was kind of in the middle of it. And but when she sent the offer, the contract offer, it was for 3 books, a 3-book year, 22, 23, 24. And I went, what? Because I hadn't even finished the second book. And the idea of it's honestly, and I know everyone can understand this, it has taken me 4 years, you know, from soup to nuts, really, just the glimmer of this idea. And I mean, I know what, you know, what he said, like I said, like I was at those meetings at Elsie Quirk. I was beginning to work on this. You know, you guys heard the first iteration of this, and it's gone through a lot of changes since then. But it takes a long time if you want to do it and put your heart and soul into it. If it's not, you know, a personal memoir, which is of course so wonderful with the other readers, but this is made up, but at the same time, you still want to have some, you want to put some heart into it, and you want to give the characters some real feeling and be real characters. And yeah, it's been a very interesting sort of ride, really. And
do you think that do you think that they would have offered you the contract to publish the first one if they had not thought there was a series behind it?
I think probably yes. I think she probably would, because a friend of mine got offered a contract, and she has written a standalone book. So she wrote the contract for 1 book. And I mean, friends of mine said, oh, you know, you should have taken the 3 books, because when you take a 3 book, you are guaranteed that 3rd publication. But at the same time, the publisher is guaranteed the 3rd book. And for me, taking time to write these books, I can't imagine. I mean, maybe once you do it once or twice, you get used to it. But I can imagine from beginning of an idea to writing a fully fledged, well thought out, well researched story, to do it in 1 year from beginning to full stop. You know, it just seems like, and now maybe obviously I can, but I don't know. We don't even have a story of it yet. So it was a frightening thought to me. So no, although I will share one other thing with the members, that I sent to 2 UK public publishers who do online books pretty much, and it's one's called Bookouture and the other one is called Sapier Books. They're privately, or they're small, well, they're not small actually, they're big, but Sapier is they're focused on mystery, suspense, historical fiction, that kind of thing. And I did end up, I got a reply from Bookouture, and they take a long time to get back to you. They say, don't expect anything back between 3 to 6 months. But I did get a response and they said, we are interested, but what else do you have? You know, are you writing a series? Do you have any other books? So they're very focused on, they want a series. And a lot of publishers, yes, they are, like Harry, you know, all of these books, if you can show them that you have more than one in you, they're very interested, because you don't necessarily make any money on the first, so I've heard. But once you have the second, if people find 2, then they might buy the first one, or vice versa. You know, that's what I hear.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Anybody else? Comments? Questions? Well done. I loved your descriptions. Just really kind of, you know, very, very focused on what you were writing there. It's, looking forward to the publication of it. Next up, The Way It Was by Margaret Jane Jones. This is a reflection of the family recipes and such from the farm in Washington, Goldendale, Washington. So, Margaret.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Is this where I am? It's my pleasure to join you this morning. And this first visual shows the size and shape of the cookbook, printed on heavy cardstock and bound with a plastic comb binder, and it allows the book to lie flat while you're cooking. Going on, let's see.
Just click down.
Oh, yeah.
Down there.
Is that? Okay. As you glance at the photograph of our home ranch, please know this book is a collection of family stories and recipes stretching from 1938 to the present time. My brother Terrence wrote the beginning stories. My sister Janet wrote of our fruit cellar and the adventures of gathering the eggs. Our sister Joan edited the entire project, and my task was to write many of the small descriptions above the recipes and illustrate the book. Here you see 8 steps in making great-grandmother's oatmeal cookies. When making these cookies, we used our own milk from the morning's milking and eggs gathered from the chicken house. Our father started us children in the rabbits business. When Mom brought our first platter of fried chicken to the table, 5-year-old Joan declared it tasted like fried chicken. But in coming years, we seldom ate fried rabbit. We children claimed we did not want to eat into our business profits, but the truth was we simply could not stomach sitting down to supper and finding our pet on our plate. Here are 6 steps in making strawberry shortcake. Pick strawberries at dawn when it is cool. 2, milk the cows and separate the cream from the milk. 3, gather the eggs in the chicken house. 4, make and bake the cake. 5, wash the berries and remove the stems. Then whip the cream and add a dash of sugar. Strawberry shortcake, sensational. Rainbow trout. First, we had the fun of catching the trout at Bowman Creek. Here is my brother Terrence with his catch at Bowman Creek, where birds sang and summer skies were true blue, the same hue as Dad's eyes. Molasses cake. Mom said this recipe originated during great-grandfather's boyhood in Maine, then it was carried to Michigan, and eventually to our corner of the Northwest. Only molasses, soda, and spices were store-bought, which made the cake affordable. Meatloaf. Our beef was top quality. We raised and grazed Herefords. In summer, our cattle pastured on grass and drank water from creeks and our stock ponds. In winter, we fed the cattle alfalfa we had grown and baled during the previous summer. Also, we kept water troughs in the corrals topped up with pristine waters flowing from the springs high in the Simcoe Mountains. Sour cream raisin pie was an old standby with our own sour cream, eggs, and lard for the crust. During the war years, we could not buy sugar because of rationing. After World War II, we bought 100 pounds of sugar at a time for canning fruit, sweetening pickles, and we were seldom short for sugar when baking sour cream raisin pie. Grandpa's sour cream donuts. It was the tantalizing aroma that drew us to the house at dusk. We had come in from sledding after the blizzard blew in on that wintry, dark December day, hungry as timber wolves. And what astonishing scene did we see? Swarms of aunts and uncles, crawling babies, grandma pounding the piano, and donuts stacked everywhere. All we could eat, to our great glee. It was a donut jamboree. And last of all, today, we display a collage of photographs from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and onwards depicting the way it was. And while you look at this briefly, I will say that we, as a family, wrote this book in the first season of COVID. Took us about 7 to 8 months to do it, and we had a good time doing it together. We made 6 copies, and here it is, the end.
Interesting. It looked like you had a lot of recipes in there.
Yes, yes.
All right. Anybody have questions or comments? Go ahead, Joyce.
You just did 6 copies, because I'd really like I'd really like one of those recipes. Sound fantastic. I mean, even that meatloaf one, horseradish, that's fantastic. So you just did the 6. You would never think of sending it out to somewhere to get it mass produced?
I've been writing a long time now, Joyce, since I stopped teaching, and for some reason I'm not anxious to spend my time publishing. We have some other projects that we're more interested in. We're in the environmental movement, saving land in New England. So
yeah,
we have other things. So anyway.
Darn.
Maybe PDFs would be the answer there.
Yeah.
If you could stop sharing your screen, Margaret, I'd be able to say there. Thank you. Go ahead, Ginger.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, I thought this was one of the best programs we've ever had. I mean, the talent in this group and the range, you know, from family memoirs to poetry to cookbook that with a special twist. I mean, it's not just, I don't buy cookbooks anymore because I just get everything online, but that is the kind of cookbook I would buy. I mean, I love the fact that you go out and get the eggs right from under the chicken's laying apparatus, and the milk from the cows. I mean, I am just so impressed with like I say, the range of talents here, and we're lucky to all be together. And I think this was a great idea for a program. And I've always loved, just to talk to Margaret's book for a second, I've always loved your illustrations from your children's book, and I'm impressed. I can write, but I can't draw at all. So I love the fact that you're able to illustrate your own books, particularly the children's books that I've seen. So thank you, everybody, for sharing it all, and I loved it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ann.
Well, we have loved to see more of this on the Poetry Pod when Margaret has shared so many of the poems and the illustrations that she did for this book. And all of us wanted a copy too. And so we share, Joyce, your feeling that this has a bigger audience than just family. And it really should be in some national archives, because it's a compilation of what happened on farms in this country, and the family relationship with cooking and gathering and preparing food is something lost, I think, in the new generation. So thank you, Margaret, for sharing this, and I'm sure your family is delighted with it.
I will, am I on, Bill?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All the land of on our ranch and farm is, it's still in my brother still lives there, and I can go home to the house in which I was born. But we're no longer farming it. We lost our wheat crop. We lost our wheat market, or an alfalfa, and cattle are down in prices too. So my brother has gone into a winery on the Columbia River down in Washington, and my family, we all still go home, but it is a time that has passed, but it certainly gave us in our family a great launching for life. So we enjoyed working together, and we're still very close.
Go ahead, Denise.
Margaret, I've so enjoyed seeing parts of this book coming through Poetry Pod. It's been just such a fun adventure to know something about your life before here, and the life of your family on the ranch. It's been wonderful. And just from what you showed us today, it's like, I want the recipe for molasses cake. And there's so maybe that suggestion of a PDF for your friends who might like some of those recipes. But it made me think of when I was 25, I took a trip around the United States with a girlfriend because we'd never been to many of the states. And one of the things I ended up doing was collecting recipe books from different historical societies we visited. And it was such a wonderful way to get a vision of what life was like in this place that was totally new to me. So you might want to think about, even though it was mostly for family, maybe there's some historical societies in the area of your ranch and family home that might really enjoy having something like this for people who are interested in the history part.
We have a historical society in our little county seat of Goldendale in Kitsap County, Washington. And it is something that's ongoing with high school kids that I went to school with, and now are very in our elderly years. But it's been interesting, and you are correct that we do have a society, yes.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I just love it when you talk about Klickitat County, Margaret. And I'm sure they would appreciate it if they could get their hands on your cookbook. And we have in poetry enjoyed a lot of the pages from your life. And I appreciate it. You are very meticulous, both in the way that you draw and paint and in the way that you write, and it shows. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for inspiring me when I first came, Cheryl. You know, you had a part in getting us me started. I'm sure I don't know what it was, but you're welcome.
Go ahead, Harry.
I enjoy your illustrations immensely, Margaret. But I also want to compliment you on your writing because it's so concise and uplifting and lively. You have a very sprightly gift in the way you do your writing. So thank you.
Thank you, Harry.
Anyone else? Congratulations on the book. I think the family affiliation comes through there. I enjoy that. I come from a close-knit family myself, and I like to cook. So I'm interested in your oatmeal cookie recipe and your meatloaf. And that looks delicious. Well, that's the end of our program today. I want to thank the authors for sharing. You did a tremendous job. Enjoyed it. The poetry, tremendous. Well done. Also want to thank everybody for showing up today. It was a great audience. I think we had a lot of diversity there. I'll echo what Ginger said. We have a lot of talent in this group, and it's good to showcase it from time to time. I wanted to remind everybody that in a month, March 5th, we'll be having our independent publishing panel. It should be an exciting time as well. I know we've gone a little bit over time today. If anybody has anything else that they'd like to share, now would be your time. Go ahead, Gloria.
Yes, I just wanted to thank everyone for sharing today. It was a wonderful presentation. I mean, we had such a range of talent and experiences, and it just makes me proud to be part of this guild and part of membership with such wonderful people and such great talent. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Hear, hear.
All right. Well, I guess that brings the program to an end. Oh, Ann, you had something?
No,
like
I
that?
just wanted to thank you for being such a wonderful facilitator and for putting this together. So thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
Very much. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you, Bill.
Best job I ever had.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Bye.